Now, as the anger over reported slave trade ongoing in Libya rages on across the world, a government has moved to repatriate at least 168 Ghanaian migrants caught in detention centers in Libya. Now, 3 of the migrants have told a team of Ghanaian delegation assessing the situation that they were among those auctioned as slaves. Deputy Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration Minister Mohammed Habib Tijani tells GH1 News measures are being put in place to ensure the safety of Ghanaians living in Libya.
A man addressing an unseen crowd. Big strong boys for farm work, he says.
The CNN expose of the slave trade in Libya has been described by many as a crime against humanity. Some are baffled that in the 21st century, slavery still exists and illegal migrants are being sold for at least $400 in Libya. The widespread outrage on the reported slavery has become a global concern. In fact, United Nations General Secretary Antonio Guterres has condemned the act and called for investigations into the case.
I am horrified at news reports and video footage showing African migrants in Libya reportedly being sold as slaves. I abhor these appalling acts and call upon all competent authorities to investigate these activities without delay and to bring the perpetrators to justice.
The Libya slave trade is key on the agenda at the ongoing 5th African Union-European Union Summit in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, where Ghana's Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration Minister Shirley Ayoko-Botchwey is attending. Her Deputy Minister Mohammed Habib Tijani says all efforts are being made to repatriate at least 168 Ghanaian migrants who were detained at the centers across Libya after they were caught by immigration.
We have our mission in Malta, and they have concurrent accreditation to Libya because when the war broke out, a lot of countries left the place for security reasons. And Ghana was one of the countries that left there. But we still have a scanty staff in our mission, the local staff who are working in a limited form. So our mission in Malta got in touch with this local staff, and these centers were visited. It is important for me to add that the situation in Libya for now is not conducive for people to be able to cover all parts of Libya because of the security situation, the kidnapping and the abuse of human rights.
The Deputy Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration Minister Mohammed Habib Tijani also tells GH1 News government plans to set up a consulate in Libya after cabinet's approval next year in order to ensure that Ghanaians there are not abused when they travel to work in Libya.
This largely depends on the improvement of the situation, the security situation on the ground. But for now, we are working with the local staff on the ground who are working directly under the Malta mission. Now, the Libyan authorities have expressed their willingness to give access to the African Union to investigate it because they denied it is not a state-sponsored activity.
Meanwhile, Libyan government has denied any involvement in the reported slave trade, but has assured of spearheading investigations to arrest those involved.
Well, we've been joined over the wires by a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa. He's member of Parliament also for North Tongue. Good evening and thank you very much for joining us. First, let me pick your thoughts on government's reaction to this story, to this development.
Thank you very much for having me. Good evening to you and good evening to distinguished viewers. My initial reaction on the government response is that we ought to, for now, encourage government to continue with the search and rescue effort. Looking at the initial response, government is telling us that they have identified 168 Ghanaians who were caught up. At this point, government says they had immigration challenges, and so they did not have the right immigration documents, and that is why they are deporting them. So the current group of Ghanaians being brought back to Ghana with the help of the IOM are different from those who are believed to be amongst African migrants in detention.
Now, speaking of which,
who are being auctioned. And so it's important at this point that we do the those who are caught up with immigration challenges, fine. We need to commend government for going to rescue them and helping bring them back to Ghana. But if you look at the CNN exclusive investigative report, they mentioned Ghana specifically, that they encountered some Ghanaians in these detention camps. And that is where the response has not been adequate. We need our government, and we need the African Union, most importantly, to convene an extraordinary heads of state meeting, and we need to see action. Time is running out. If you look at the footage, if you look at the way human beings are being treated, hanging upside down, no food, no water, we don't have time for a wait and see approach and all of that.
Now, what we know also is the fact that Foreign Affairs Minister Shirley Ayoko-Botwe has made mention of the fact that 3 Ghanaians have been identified in the slave trade in Libya. Has this come to the attention of the committee in Parliament?
We have also heard about this latest development. You notice that the initial statement that was put out by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs sought to state that so far no Ghanaian has been identified in the detention camp. The latest development runs contrary to what the Foreign Affairs Ministry statement sought to portray yesterday. So we are making progress. This confirms the CNN report. If you follow the CNN documentary, you notice that they mention Mali, Niger, Nigeria, and Ghana as countries that are affected. And that is why I believe that the feet dragging is not the way to go. Our heads of state in Africa, that we need to see an African solution. So far, the French President Emmanuel Macron appears to be the one really pushing hard. He's asking for the UN Security Council to be convened so that there can be swift action. If you look at the CNN report and you consider the fact that you have 9 detention centers that they have identified across Libya in areas that are beyond government control, because Libya is now really largely a failed state. There are 2 governments, one in Tripoli, one in Benghazi. What you need is a military solution to get in there quickly and rescue these African migrants before they lose their lives.
So you think what we need now is a military solution?
Absolutely, because you heard our foreign minister say that the situation is dangerous. You can't expect her and her officers to get in there and identify who guns and all of that. At this point, let us all just admit that these are all human beings. It's not accepted. It doesn't matter which country they come from, whether Ghanaians are in there or not, whether Ghanaians are many or not, or Ghanaians are the majority. These are all fellow Africans, human beings who must not.
But when you think about it, how helpful will a military solution be at this point in a country where really there is no established government? Will be difficult to even identify where these men are in the first place. How helpful will a military solution be to this?
It will be very helpful. CNN has offered us a starting point. CNN has identified 9 detention centers. We can start with that. You remember that all the footage emanating from Libya, you have the captors armed. The pictures in the video show that they are armed to the teeth. Most of them are terrorists who belong to all these terrorist groups that use Libya now as a safe haven. So these are not people that, and they are very development. They are not people that you maybe identify their leadership and try to negotiate with them. And there are people who don't understand negotiations. And these are not people we should even be negotiating with in the first place. These are plain-faced criminal terrorists who must be apprehended and brought to justice. These crimes against humanity must stop. And that is why the best solution is a swift military action that shows greater capacity of military force will force them out and will get these detention centers totally captured, so that we can then rescue all of these African migrants and bring them to safety. We cannot afford. I see,
but Honorable, I was just going to get into the fact that for such a volatile region, it is, as a country itself, there seems to be some sort of bad blood between what appears to be a government and those anti-government. So already there's some sort of military action there. If that could work, wouldn't we have seen some sort of progress with the kind of friction existing in that part of the country, in that part of the continent already? I mean, we could also be exposing our men to a more volatile situation if military action is our only resort. Well, I believe we have lost him over the phone, but the conversation continues, Patrick.
Well, yeah, the conversation definitely continues, and I understand we've been joined. We'll be joined sometime by another expert in the person of Mr. Kojo Wilmot, who is the national officer. Who's the national officer for the International Organization on Migration. I hear he's joined us. Mr. Kojo Wilmot, good evening and thank you for joining us.
Hi, good evening, and good evening to your cherished viewers.
So definitely, Libya is something that must have been on the agenda of the IOM in the last couple of days since this particular report broke out. What can you tell us from the perspective of the IOM regarding this development?
Thank you again. Thank you so much for this opportunity. In fact, with the IOM, Libya has been on a table for quite a long time, not just in this recent time. Since 2006, we have been working closely with the government of Ghana as well as other key stakeholders to help in the return of stranded Ghanaian migrants from Libya to Ghana. This situation has come to the limelight now because of this footage that was shared by this undercover journalist from CNN. And so it has drawn a lot of attention and then high public outcry on the situation. We know the situation has been dire, that a lot of sub-Saharan African nationals have been exposed to inhumane treatment. They have been exploited. They have been victims of trafficking and smuggled. We have known this situation, that this exists for over a period of time. And so one of the interventions in place is to help in the return of these stranded migrants from Libya back voluntarily to Ghana.
So if I
give the opportunity.
If I understand you correctly, so you have been working at this since 2006 together with the government of Ghana. So I suppose that even the Kufuor regime, saw this problem and the fact that some Ghanaians had to be returned back into the country if they wanted to do that voluntarily, that is. How many people have you been able to return with the help of the Ghana government till date?
Till date, for instance, as we speak, we visited some detention centers, and we have close to 266 Ghanaians who have been identified to be supported to return. We also know for a fact that since April this year, we have assisted in the return of close to 241 Ghanaian nationals from Libya and then Niger. What we have done over the period is to ensure that these returnees return voluntarily. And then we provide some psychosocial counseling support to help in effective reintegration. And after this reintegration, we monitor to ensure that their reintegration is just not sustainable in the short run. But of course, they reintegrate back into the society over the longer and over a long-term period.
Well, thank you very much for sharing these insights with us. The voice you were hearing there was that of Kojo Wilmot, who is the national officer with the International Organization on Migration, giving us some reactions on the developments we're seeing in Libya and the strategies that have been deployed by the IOM in conjunction with the Ghana government to return some Ghanaians from Libya. Now, you have also been sharing your thoughts on social media regarding the developments we have in Libya, and social media has gone agog since the story broke out about the sale of African migrants in Libya. Investigations are to commence into the matter, but what do you think about the global response to this slave trade? Well, 58% believe that the reaction is a little too late, too slow. 38% believe it is an African problem, and 4% couldn't be bothered. But by and large, it looks as though the reaction that you have out there in the general public, and you could keep sharing these insights with us, but I think people generally feel that it's an African problem. Africans have to deal with it. I mean, I agree with that to a large extent, and some equally believe that the reaction we're getting now is too late.
Yeah.
Because since the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011,
it's been like that.
You've had people trying to sojourn, to Europe through Libya, and every now and then these sort of developments occur. But let's hope that the congregation of heads of states that are currently looking at the problem will find some lasting solution to it.
I don't know what you think about the military action. I think it would create a more explosive situation in Libya.
It will. I mean, it depends on the way it's executed. I feel that there's a certain huge void in Libya, and so we'll have to tread cautiously. The argument is that, we deploy military, particularly when it's a sovereign state. Where is the military intervention coming from? The AU? Is it coming from, the UN? We have to understand all of these dynamics properly. But that's just our view. Keep sharing yours with us on our various social media handles. And this brings us to the end of Inside.
Welcome back. Elsewhere on the continent, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has said all Nigerians stranded in Libya will be brought home and rehabilitated. Reacting to the recent video footage released by CNN showing youth from sub-Saharan African countries being sold as farm workers for about $400 at a slave auction in Libya, President Buhari said it was appalling that some Nigerians were being sold like goats for a few dollars in Libya. He vowed to reduce the number of Nigerians making the dangerous journey through the Sahara Desert and over the Mediterranean to reach Europe by providing education, healthcare and food security back home. Muhammadu Buhari made the comments at a session with the Nigerian diaspora on the sidelines of the Africa European Union Summit in Ivorian capital Abidjan.